Taiwan's Hanguang military drills enter their third day, and the focus is on Taipei.
I'm Bing Wong for TaiwanPlus, and I'm here at the port of Taipei, where the country is simulating drills to protect Taiwan's capital.
Also ahead, under pressure, a stadium-sized scandal gets worse for the former mayor. Politicians battling it out to become the UK's next Prime Minister are touting their anti-China credentials. But is it all talk? Plus, the Dragonboat sea crossing that's not for the faint-hearted. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. It's day 3 of Taiwan's Hanguang exercises, the largest military drills in the country. Events on Wednesday focused on protecting Taiwan's capital of Taipei, perhaps the most important exercise yet. This report from Bing Wang.
Protecting a vital gateway to Taipei. Taiwan's military is rehearsing its defense of the capital city should an enemy attack through the Danshui River. It's day 3 of the week-long Hanguang military exercises. These drills take place every year, but this one in Taipei is seen as the most crucial.
这一段呢，是最主要的一段，其实是敌军最可能来透过这个上岸之后，夺取了台北港之后，敌军可以很顺利的短时间之内就会大批的上岸。
2.6 million people live in Taipei, the economic and political hub of Taiwan. Defense strategists believe this city is a prime target for possible invasion. Just across the narrow strait on the west lies China, which claims Taiwan as part of its own territory and has threatened to take the country by force. This is Taipei's port, and China is just across the waters over there, and Taipei is only 15 kilometers that way. Preventing an enemy invasion on this port and accessing Taipei's capital is integral to Taiwan's defense. Experts say if Taipei is taken, then Taiwan will fall as well. For Taiwan's military, seeing Ukrainians defend their country from Russia's invasion has prompted reassessment of their own combat strategy. Like Ukraine, Taiwan knows it can't match a larger adversary's military power, and it's concerned it might have to mount a defense on its own.
We can see many asymmetrical warfare in the exercise, which will be emphasizing missile attack, and will be focusing on like the sea mine deployment in the ocean. So I think that's kind of practice and the improvement of the asymmetrical warfare in Taiwan's defense.
There are other drills taking place across the country, including live fire simulations, exercises involving reserve forces, and public participation in civil defense preparedness. Back in the capital, in an area vulnerable to invasion from Chinese forces, Taiwan's military is hoping tactics practiced here can effectively counter an attack from a much larger foe. Patrick Chen, Ricky, Bing Wong, in New Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
The Hanguang exercises have continued in other parts of Taiwan as well. On the Jinmen Islands, which lie just 6 kilometers from the Chinese coast, paratroopers joined anti-landing exercises involving heavy artillery. And in the southern county of Pingdong, over 70 paratroopers jumped from 5 transport planes in formation. A military spokesperson said the exercise was designed to test Taiwan's ability to quickly send reinforcements to different parts of the country. Taiwan is seizing 61 properties worth about $47 million from the China Youth Corps. That's a group linked to the country's biggest opposition party, the Kuomintang, or KMT. The Ill-Gotten Party Assets Settlement Committee announced the decision on Tuesday. The body investigates and returns property and assets gained by political parties and their affiliates during Taiwan's martial law period, when the Kuomintang ruled Taiwan as a one-party state. The ruling means the China Youth Corps must hand its properties, including youth activity centres and youth hostels, to the state within 30 days. For properties already sold, the committee is demanding cash. The youth organisation says it is not a subsidiary of the KMT, but the committee says the party enlisted the group to spy on campuses.
国民党中常会的会议记录哈，那工作项目包括什么呢？包括调查留学生的全盘状况，掌握他的动态，在每一个学校里面布建细胞，收集留学生的活动情报，并且分送各情报单位。
Former Hsinchu Mayor Lin Zijian is under fire for construction problems at the Hsinchu baseball stadium. Several players have been injured at the stadium since it reopened. Public anger is mounting and it's leading to a closer examination of Lin's involvement in the project. Yu Jinghuang reports.
A politician under pressure. Lin Zijian, the former mayor of Taiwan's northern city of Hsinchu, is considered a rising star of the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP. But a series of scandals have led to questions about his leadership credentials. At the center of it all, this recently reopened baseball stadium in Hsinchu. It took 3 years and $4 million to renovate, but serious construction flaws led to it being shut after just 2 days. Among other issues, an uneven playing field, which left several players injured.
已经组成了改善小组哦，那邀集了球员工会，也邀集了这一个相关的这个工程的团队，也邀集了中职哦。那我相信这个新竹市政府哦，一定会在最快的时间哦，把这个球场修复好哦。
Aside from an apology, Lin has offered to pay for the injured players' medical bills. But this has not dampened critics' calls for an inquiry into who is responsible for the poor condition of the stadium.
我自己这边是已经准备好监察院的书面报告。那我知道国民党好像已经有去监察院去送。
The baseball stadium controversy follows hot on the heels of accusations that Lin plagiarized his 2 master's theses, allegedly taking portions directly from a government report. Lin denies any wrongdoing. Lin stepped down as Hsinchu mayor prior to the controversies to run for office as the DPP's candidate in the nearby city of Taoyuan. But with the Hsinchu District Prosecutor's Office opening a case into the renovation of the baseball stadium, and Lin's old universities looking to investigate the allegations of plagiarism, one of Taiwan's up-and-coming political stars faces a nervous few months before polling day. James Renner and Yu Jinghuang for TaiwanPlus.
In the UK, the contest to choose the next leader of the Conservative Party and the country's new Prime Minister has narrowed to 2 candidates, former Finance Minister Rishi Sunak and Foreign Minister Liz Truss. The tussle has been fierce, with accusations of mudslinging levelled at both candidates. But as James Chater reports, China scepticism appears to be one thing the contenders can agree on.
The golden era of UK-China relations. Then British Prime Minister David Cameron visiting Beijing in 2013, successfully boosting economic ties between the 2 nations.
Some, in Europe and elsewhere, see the world changing and want to shut China off behind a bamboo curtain of trade barriers. Britain wants to tear those trade barriers down.
What a difference a decade makes. In London, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak are now fighting to become leader of the UK Conservative Party and the country's new Prime Minister. Both candidates are attempting to outcompete each other on their anti-China credentials.
I don't think it's inevitable that China will be the biggest economy in the world. In fact, we've been enabling that to happen. We have to learn from the mistakes we made of Europe becoming dependent on Russian oil and gas. We cannot allow that to happen with China. And freedom is a price worth paying.
Setting out his own China skeptic platform on social media, former Finance Minister Rishi Sunak labelled China the UK's #1 threat, unveiling a host of China-targeted policies he'll implement if elected. They include closing all 30 of the UK's Confucius Institutes, Chinese education centres funded by Beijing, building a NATO-style alliance to tackle Chinese cyber threats, and widening the reach of MI5, the UK's security service, to combat Chinese espionage.
The fact that both candidates feel there is political capital to be won by being seen as the more hawkish one on China speaks to a deteriorating political relationship with China and with Beijing. Both candidates feel that they can win Conservative member votes by being seen to be hard on China.
And that's already caught the attention of Beijing.
我想奉劝个别英国政客，动辄拿中国说事儿，鼓噪所谓“中国威胁论”等不负责任的言论，并不能解决自己的问题。
Human rights abuses against Uyghurs in Xinjiang, security concerns over Chinese telecoms company Huawei, and a crackdown on freedoms in Hong Kong have all driven a dramatic shift in UK perceptions of China in recent years. But China is still the UK's largest import partner, and so questions remain as to whether the two candidates vying for the keys of number 10 Downing Street, the UK Prime Minister's official residence, will really be that tough on China.
I think one of the key questions that we have to ask is that because of Liz Truss's natural instincts or own initiative, or has she followed the broader shift in UK-China relations? When it comes to Rishi Sunak, I think it's really too soon to tell. All of these new announcements from Rishi Sunak are quite new, and how sincere they are, it's difficult to tell.
The new British Prime Minister will be announced in early September. Only then will it be known if the candidate's tough talking on China has body or is just bluster. Chris Marr and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.
To find out more about how China has become a topic in the Conservative Party leadership contest, our reporter James Chater spoke to Luke de Pulford, a commissioner in the Conservative Party Human Rights Commission. In this interview, he speaks in a personal capacity.
Has China emerged as a prominent point of contention in previous Conservative leadership elections or even general elections? And if not, why is it now?
In previous general elections or in Conservative Party leadership elections, you would rarely hear anything about China. The reason that we are doing now is that the challenges posed by the People's Republic of China, or particularly the government of the People's Republic of China, are really becoming an issue that people want to grapple with. The difficulty we have in the current leadership election is that if China is seen as just a bit of red meat to throw to the China hawks in order to try to get elected, we are not going to do justice to a proper systematic view of probably the major foreign policy consideration, and increasingly the major domestic policy consideration because of the entwinement of the economy of the PRC and our own economy.
It appears the remaining two candidates are now trying to outdo each other on their hawkishness toward China. Do you think these views are genuinely held or just for the purposes of this election?
You have to say in Liz Truss's favour that she has a relatively long-standing concern about the rise of China under Xi Jinping. She's also spoken of the need to reduce strategic dependency upon China, something that IPAC has been calling for a long time, and she's adopted that language all before the leadership election. I don't think you can say the same of Rishi Sunak. Rishi was quite well known in the Treasury for pushing for the resumption of trade talks with China. His previous position always seemed to be to prioritise the trading opportunities offered by Beijing, and we've seen a massive U-turn. In fact, a journalist called it Fishy Rishi's China U-turn, which I think is a not inaccurate description from those of us who've been pushing for a more realistic view of China policy in the UK.
Do you think this leadership election will offer a chance for the UK to shift or bolster its broader policy towards the Indo-Pacific and perhaps even Taiwan as well?
I think both candidates are setting the scene for a wholesale review of our policy towards China and consequently a review of our posture towards the Indo-Pacific more generally. I think what I'd say about Taiwan is that Liz Truss gave a pretty strong answer about Taiwan's right to self-determination, but also right to defend itself against aggression from the PRC. And Rishi didn't disagree with that. I think that's very significant because that is a huge departure from where the UK government is right now, and has always been, which is not really to treat diplomatic relations with Taiwan very seriously. That seems set to change. And if that does change, I think it's got to be a good thing, not just for the UK, but for strategy, a Taiwan strategy, the possibility of a Taiwan strategy developing throughout Europe.
A team of young seafarers has completed a rowing first, a Dragonboat marathon across the sea. John Van Trieste has the story.
With a confident cheer, a team of rowers sets off at the crack of dawn, steering their Dragonboat out of Budai Harbor on Taiwan's west coast. The goal is the Penghu Islands, a chain in the middle of the Taiwan Strait. Modern ferries make the crossing in around 90 minutes, but rowing across the 56 kilometers of waves will take around 10 hours. This will be the first time the crossing is attempted in a Dragonboat. The team ranges in experience from a 14-year-old trainee kayaker to a kayaker who's represented Taiwan abroad. But unlike in solo kayaking, the key here will be teamwork. Everyone is in the same boat. Ultimately, safety at sea comes first. After 10 hours, the rowers finally reach their destination, where locals set off firecrackers in welcome. For the rowers, the Dragonboat crossing has been a success of teamwork, strength, and grit, and they've achieved something no one else has done before. Damon Lin and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
At least 4 people have been killed and dozens wounded by a massive earthquake that rocked northern parts of the Philippines. The magnitude 7 tremor struck northern Luzon Island, badly damaging a local hospital and other buildings. Landslides have also been reported. The quake lasted about 30 seconds and was felt strongly in the capital of Manila, over 400 kilometers away. The Senate building was evacuated and the city's metro system was temporarily halted. The government has dispatched rescue teams to the hardest hit areas. The quake was the country's strongest in almost a decade. Indonesia and China have agreed to scale up trade and expand cooperation in agriculture and food security. Indonesia's President Joko Widodo met China's President Xi Jinping in Beijing on Tuesday. He's the first foreign head of state to visit China since the Winter Olympics in February. On top of its commitment to deepen trade ties, China also agreed to back Indonesia's chairmanship of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, next year. Widodo is now in Japan and is also due to visit South Korea. World economic growth is slowing and the outlook for a quick recovery is gloomy. That's according to the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, which has cut global growth forecasts again. It expects growth to slow from 6.1% last year to 3.2% this year. This is 0.4% lower than its outlook in April. The IMF says there is higher than expected inflation, particularly in the United States and Europe. China's slowdown has been worse than expected, and it says there are further risks of Russia's war in Ukraine pushing energy and food prices higher.
The world may soon be teetering on the edge of a global recession, only 2 years after the last one. Multilateral cooperation will be key in many areas, from climate transition and pandemic preparedness to food security and debt distress.
TaiwanPlus reporter Louise Watt spoke to Singapore-based Arup Raha, the head of Asia Economics at Oxford Economics, about the effect of a slowdown in global growth on Asia.
What are the implications for Asia when it comes to the uncertainty that's out there at the moment?
A fair amount. I mean, Asia is no stranger to crises. I mean, we've the global financial crisis, the Asian crisis, .com. We've had our issues, but we've come out fine, and there have been a few things that have always been in our favor. The first is that China has barely blinked through any of these crises, so we've had that element of stability and growth that has helped Asia. The second thing that's been there is that the Fed has, just once it was relatively steady, but otherwise it's been cutting interest rates. So, liquidity conditions have been there. This time the Fed is raising rates. So you take away the two real pillars that have helped Asia through previous crises, both are in the other direction. One further element that I think is important is that not only is global growth suffering, which is going to affect Asia, but the nature of demand as countries open up, the nature of demand is shifting. There's a fair amount of pent-up demand for services, which is going out to eat or travel, whatever. And as that starts expressing itself, demand for goods is going to go down, and goods is what we export. So I think it's going to be a relatively difficult period for Asia in terms of the external influences.
And what about Taiwan? Because Taiwan is also suffering inflation like elsewhere in Asia, but it has the semiconductor industry to keep its head above the water, as it were.
Taiwan's economy, if you take the external part of it, which is probably what drives it. Now, there are two elements to it, and I think both are fading right now. The first is China. Chinese growth matters a lot to Taiwan. And China's growth, if you saw the second quarter GDP numbers, is probably, China is doing its worst growth performance in 40 years. And it's going to obviously have an impact on Taiwan. The second is the electronic cycle. Taiwan has benefited from it, but it has been the nature of demand over the course of the pandemic, where people have sat at home and they've bought every gizmo under the sun that they could get their hands on. They've upgraded their computers. They've got this game, that game. Now that is going to fade because there are budget constraints. And if you start spending your money more on going out to eat and traveling, etc., your demand for home products, electronic products, is going to fade. So there are two headwinds that are heading towards Taiwan. Otherwise, the economy, before you consider these, held up reasonably well, which is why they've actually been a bit tighter in monetary policy than, say, countries in Southeast Asia.
German firefighters are battling a forest fire that's threatening to destroy the homes of 6,000 people. The blaze in eastern Germany spread rapidly towards the town of Falkenberg on Tuesday after the winds shifted. But local firefighters held it back, and they are optimistic of putting it out entirely in the next few days. The fire is just one of several burning near Germany's border with the Czech Republic, with Europe sweltering during a summer of record-breaking heat waves. And in Switzerland, scientists say glaciers in the Alps are on track to lose the most ice for at least 60 years. That's after record-breaking heat waves pushed temperatures in the high mountains to almost 30 degrees Celsius. The massive Morterasch glacier in the east has already shrunk by almost 3 kilometers in the last 150 years, and projections show it could be gone by the end of the century. Climate change is causing temperatures here to rise twice as fast as the global average. The Alps glaciers were already more vulnerable to melting because of their smaller size. But the scale of this year's runoff has shocked scientists because it is happening at higher, colder altitudes. After months of uncertainty, Russia has signaled that it is withdrawing from the International Space Station. Rahul Kirkpatrick has this story.
It was the final frontier for US-Russia cooperation, but Moscow now says it is withdrawing from the International Space Station, putting an end to a 2-decade-long partnership.
Вы знаете, что мы ведем работу в рамках международного сотрудничества на Международной космической станции. Безусловно, все свои обязательства мы выполним перед нашими партнерами, но решение и уход с этой станции после 2024 года принят. Я думаю, что к этому времени мы начнем формировать российскую орбитальную станцию.
Moscow says the pullout is a reaction to Western sanctions initiated against Russia for its ongoing invasion of Ukraine. And although the decision hasn't been formalized, it comes after months of bluster. Washington says they're pressing on regardless.
We're exploring options to mitigate the potential impacts on the ISS beyond 2024 if Russia does withdraw. For our part, we remain committed to working with ISS partners to ensure the safe operation of the ISS and the astronauts who are on board.
When it was launched in the 1990s, the ISS was a potent symbol of how far the two superpowers had come. From Cold War rivals to partners, propelling human advancement arm in arm. Russia's withdrawal signals the end of an era, but some in the US are looking on the bright side.
I think this is an opportunity for NASA because I think they were reluctant to go all out to ask for funding from Congress and to really do something publicly about trying to break this dependency on the Russians for the space station out of fear for angering the Russians, for fear that they would rapidly pull out and leave us with nothing, right? But now they have this opportunity to say, okay, we got 2 years.
As the rift between Washington and Moscow deepens, even 400 kilometers above the Earth's surface isn't far enough to escape the ratcheting tensions below. Ryan Hill-Kilpatrick for TaiwanPlus.
Beloved Japanese characters are taking to the skies in Taiwan. Pikachu and other Pokemon will be prominently displayed on a China Airlines plane, Taiwan's flagship carrier. The specially decorated jet will start flying this fall to destinations in several parts of Asia. China Airlines and the Pokemon Company are also planning special deals for workers who were hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic, including medical staff, airport police and quarantine taxi drivers. Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Finally, we leave you with images of an Argentinian cartoon and comic strip exhibition in Mexico. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the TaiwanPlus app. Stay safe and see you next time.